The Dershow.
We have an obligation to be concerned about these radical haters, these vicious, racist anti-Semites who applaud Hamas. We really have an obligation to be concerned that they may cross that line. We have an obligation to watch them carefully. We have an obligation to be concerned. We have an obligation to observe. We have an obligation, if we know anybody who's doing that, to report it. We have an obligation to be careful, because if we're not, we're going to fall into the same trap we fell into in the late 1960s, early 1970s, where we weren't ready. We weren't ready for the Kathy Boudins. We weren't ready for protesters to become murderers. We weren't ready for people to cross the line from incitement to actual violence. We weren't ready for that. I want to be ready for that. I've written about that a lot. And I am an expert in the law of prevention. And I worry deeply about whether we're not sufficiently concerned. Right now, the argument is it protected by the First Amendment as advocacy, or is it incitement? That's a very important issue. I'm worried about the next step. Will it turn from incitement to actual participation? I think it may. I think there are people standing in front of Columbia today who would help Hamas if Hamas asked them to. And believe me, Hamas will ask them to, because Hamas is watching this. Remember, Hamas sent a note praising these racists and anti-Semites, saying, "You are the future of America." Hamas is right about that. These students from Columbia are the future of America, which is why I wrote a column saying that what's happening at Columbia may be far more dangerous than what happened on January 6th or what happened in Charlottesville. Those were not the future leaders of America. These elite kids who come from rich families, who are paying $90,000 for tuition and room and board. They're Jewish, they can't even go to class. But these are the elite kids who could become our future, who next year may be working for Goldman Sachs, and the year after maybe in the editorial room of the New York Times or CNN. When you say Israel is guilty of genocide, you're denying the Holocaust. You're denying what genocide really is. Genocide is taking people, babies, and putting them in gas chambers and killing them deliberately and directly, and then burning their ashes in crematoriums. That's genocide. Genocide isn't fighting in self-defense against terrorists who have promised to rape your daughters and kill your children. And because Hamas puts human shields in the way of Israel getting the Hamas terrorists, some are killed. That's not genocide. That's self-defense. Israel has killed, in proportion to the combatants it's killed, fewer civilians than any country in the history of urban warfare with the use of human shields. Much, much less than Great Britain, much less than the United States, much less than any other civilized country, much less than Canada, much less than Australia. And so the idea of calling Israel genocidal is racism, but it's also a form of Holocaust denial, because if all the Holocaust was what Israel has done, if Germany had just acted in self-defense and killed, a few thousand Jews who were used as human shields, that wouldn't be a Holocaust. That would be what Israel's doing. So to compare what Israel's doing with the Holocaust, to compare it to genocide, is a form of homicide, a form of Holocaust and genocide denial.